Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I made this video the other day, yesterday, in fact, I believe, because the woke thinks it's okay for JoJo to do this. And this was a video that was on Facebook. He grabs the kid by his face, and then he's, kissing him and grabbing him and doing all these things and, being JoJo, and then rubs his back and he's caressing his head and all these things, right? Typical JoJo stuff, right? And like I said, I saw it on Facebook, and then someone sent it to me on Instagram. It was a TikTok video that was up. And so then I saw that on Facebook today, one of my friends had posted this video, not the one I posted, but just the raw video. And it says, fact check, Joe Biden was not caught on camera inappropriately touching a little boy. And so I decided to do a little thing that I like to call fact checking the fact checkers. And so this is one of the things that Facebook is putting up to dispute what you just saw with your own eyes. Does a 10-second video clip show President Joe Biden again inappropriately kissing a young boy? No, that's not true. See, the word again here is because JoJo kissed a boy on the lips. Remember that? The clip from 2015 shows Joe Biden comforting his grandson, Robert Hunter Biden, at the funeral of the child's father. Now, I thought it might have been a relative. I thought it was one of his grandkids. I said that because you could see Jill and what looked like to be one of the wives or daughters of, one of the family members there next to the kid. So when I covered it, I said that it was probably one of the kids, one of the Biden family, but of course I didn't know, but that's what it looked like. So I didn't, say it was some random kid. And I don't know if people were doing that. So that part they correctly fact check, right? It's a fact that Robert Hunter Biden, that's who he was kissing, which is his grandkid, all right? At the funeral of the child's father, Beau Biden, Joe Biden strokes his grandson's hair and kisses him on the cheek and puts his hand on the boy's shoulder. In many families, these are typical and appropriate public gestures of comfort and affection. And this is a subjective interpretation. This isn't fact, right? Because what they're disputing here is that he inappropriately touched the little boy. And so, the inappropriate part is what's being debated here, right? It's not a fact. Like, you have to establish whether you think it's inappropriate or not, or whether it's inappropriate legally or, socially or whatever, etiquette-wise and things like this. And so them saying it isn't inappropriate and making it sound like he's actually doing a good thing for the kid and comforting him by, stroking his head while the kid is sad about his dad dying isn't factually accurate. If you do some clinical thinking here and examine JoJo's history. So let's go back to the clip. The inappropriate part is, so first of all, he's stroking the child's head. Now, who's to say the kid wants this? Probably not. The kid isn't crying. The kid doesn't need solace, as JoJo said. So when they decided to run JoJo for president, this past, I guess it was the summer of 2019, and he hadn't announced his candidacy yet. What they did is they had a couple of Democratic women who were in politics, come out and say Joe had stiffed their hair or he had done something, and they were controlled, right? And so this was something they knew was going to be a problem because Jon Stewart had done a hit piece on him called The Audacity of Grope, right? And I've covered this before. And CNN had done a hit piece in 2015 when they didn't want him to run and they were backing Hillary, and they were talking about his inappropriate touching of women and little kids. So they knew this was going to be an issue. There was lots of video out there. I mean, they did a great job at minimizing this, and the media and Facebook and social media did everything in their power to suppress this information. And so what they did is they had a controlled burn where they had, women that he, said that he had touched them inappropriately on the campaign trail and sniffed their hair and did what JoJo does. And then JoJo came out and gave this lame apology And then Whoopi Goldberg, among other people, backed him and, were apologists for his weird touching behaviors. And this is what he said in that non-apology apology.
I'll always be direct with you, but today I want to talk about gestures of support and encouragement that I've made to women and some men that have made them uncomfortable.
And children, and these aren't gestures of support and encouragement. Is that how the person on the receiving end thought? Lots of people on the receiving end didn't think these were gestures of support and encouragement.
Gestures of support and encouragement that
So does that mean any man can go grope a woman at their office and say it's a gesture of support and encouragement? Right? Like, it's not how it's being received, and that's not how they're, it looks, right? And that's his interpretation, that he's doing gestures of support and encouragement
that I've made to women and some men that have made them uncomfortable. And I always tried to be, in my career, I've always tried to make a human connection. That's my responsibility, I think. I shake hands, I hug people, I grab men and women by the shoulders and say, you can do this. And
by that you mean be groped by you? You can do this. We'll get through this together. You grabbed your grandson by the face and yanked his head into your arm. I'll show you that in just a moment. And you are sniffling and snoozling and snuffleupagussing and all these things with women and children all over the place. Like, he's not opening up about all the things that he did and why he did them, because it's weird, right? And he's, minimizing his behaviors.
Whether they're women, men, young, old, it's the way I've always been. It's the way I've tried to show I care about them and I'm listening. And over the years, knowing what...
If you're listening, because you'll see some of the people, I'm going to do a highlight of this later, they're pulling away from him. They don't want it, right? He's not reading their body language. He's not asking them if it's okay. He's not asking them if they want this. And so what he's saying here, he listens, that's not true as well. So this is a horrible apology, right? He's making it sound like he's doing them a service, and that's what the fact checkers are saying as well to the video.
What I've been through, the things that I've faced, I've found that scores, if not hundreds of people have come up to me and reached out for solace and comfort, something, anything that may...
So when you went up and snoozled some woman who was about to give a speech in some public event, or these kids who their parents and grandparents are being sworn in as senators and things, they weren't asking for solace. They were in a celebratory mood. Like, he's just making things up. Like, this is, these are all lies, JoJo. Lies that we can easily see through.
It may help them get through the tragedy they're going through. And so it's just who I am. And I've never thought of politics as cold and antiseptic. I've always thought about connecting with people. As I said, shaking hands, hands on the shoulder, a hug, encouragement.
Yeah, so that's why they hid you away your entire... They wouldn't let you go out there because you were a gaff magnet, and they hid you away because, they made COVID excuses, right? His whole campaign, he was hidden in his basement as they slammed Trump about his COVID policies and things, nonstop in the media and social media and all these other places. I mean, just think about the lies and just all of it. Like, I'm not a Trumper. I've never voted for a Republican. I'm not, I don't care about these things. I don't vote anymore. Just the lies. I'm just tired of these frickin' liars and their lies and the media that covers up for them and everybody, social media. It's just disgusting, right? Like, just if you're a part of that, like, just think about what a scummy person you are, that you're contributing to all this just ickiness, right? Just horrible.
Encouragement. And now it's all about taking selfies together. Social norms have begun to change. They've shifted. And the boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset. And I get it.
You didn't get it. Like, you only got it because you're running for president and they told you, you're not going to win, you groper. Like, you got handled, bro.
I hear what they're saying. I understand it. And I'll be much more mindful. That's my responsibility. And I'll meet it. But I'll always believe governing, quite frankly, life for that matter, is about connecting with people. That won't change. but I will be more mindful and respectful of people.
All right, so I'm not going to show the rest of this. Just horrible, right? Just a horrible human being, just a liar and believing his own lies and just a lecherous creep, right? Just all the things. We'll go through it. Let's go back to this, this fact check. So there's a grandson. He's starting to head into church. I've slowed this down a little bit. This is the original footage from C-SPAN. So he touches his head there. But then this is not a normal. He grabs him by the face and pulls him in to his body, right? And then he gets into this dominant position where he's literally having his hand over the kid's mouth. I mean, is this giving the kid solace? Like if you were an adult man and some other man came up behind you and did this, grabbed your, reached around and grabbed your mouth and pulled your head into them, right? It's not a normal movement. It's not a way to console somebody. And the article doesn't mention that, right? The article doesn't say anything. The fact-checked article doesn't say anything about him grabbing him by the face and pulling him back in. And so here's where it says, he says, Joe Biden strokes his grandson's hair and kisses him on the cheek and puts his hand on the boy's shoulder. And so that's not fact-checking. That's not fact. That's a complete deception, because the biggest movement that he does here, let's look at it again. Again, we're talking about inappropriately here. Is this appropriate or inappropriate? Because what they were saying is this is typical and appropriate public gestures of comfort and affection that some families engage in. I've never seen anybody do this before. Right here. Have you ever seen anybody do this? Is this look appropriate? It looks like, he's giving the kid a talking to. And the kid was swaying back and forth. Like he seemed to be, I'll show you the clip again, but it seemed like he was anxious to get in there because this thing went on for like an hour and a half. And he's a kid, right? And so maybe he was getting a little restless. But it seems like he was saying, all right, settle down there, buddy. Or this is an act of dominance, right? Years ago, I took martial arts. The instructor said the head is the steering wheel to the body. You know that with horses and cows, right? When you want to, lead a cow somewhere, you put a halter on them and there's a ring on it, or, they put a nose ring on it. Or if you're going to ride a horse, there's reins and you control the head. You steer the horse you want to go by pulling their head in one direction or another. These are big animals. This is a little boy. And so this whole movement, which culminates in this, that doesn't look like normal, comforting behavior. It looks aggressive. It looks dominant. Again, it's, have you ever seen a grandfather do this to a kid? All that stuff. It looks a little bit sort of creepy and sexual. And so this fact checker sucks, right? Because they're leaving out the biggest part of it where he puts his hand over the boy's mouth. Let's look at it again. So the boy's looking in there. Maybe he's starting to go a little bit. She looks down at him, the widow, and Joe Biden sees this. He said, all right, he touches his, strokes his hair, and then look at that, like right there. That's effed up. Reaching his hand around, grabbing his chin, having his hand over the boy's mouth, and then kissing him in a dominant way. And so this fact checker leaves out the most disturbing part, because that isn't appropriate to me. This is subjective. But again, what kind of people would think that's appropriate? See, kids tolerate a lot more things than adults do, especially stuff that's disrespectful. And so if you were like a grown-ass man or a woman, adult woman, and some guy, even your grandfather, came up and so started stroking your hair like this, right? You'd be like, that's odd, right? All right, that doesn't, I'm not digging that. And then this, boom. Like, what adult would tolerate this? What person would think this is okay, right? That's aggressive behavior. He's putting his hand over his face like it's, maybe that was back when he really wanted masks or something. I mean, he's got his hand over the boy's mouth, tilts his head back, and he kisses him in a forceful way. It's a way of establishing dominance. And he rubs his back or whatever. And his son isn't crying. He isn't weeping. He isn't showing any sign of, his grandson isn't showing any sign of being upset about his father's passing. And so the whole thing is off the charts creepy. And this fact checker gets it completely wrong. So the people who put this up originally, this video, the posters, the meme posters, the people who are making this into a meme on TikTok and I guess Instagram and then I guess Facebook, they misrepresented some facts. I always say don't do that because the truth is way worse than it needs to be. Like, you don't have to embellish anything, but they pretended like this happened recently, and they said some things that was like a little boy, and it's obviously his family. That's Hunter. That's Beau Biden's widow there, and Jill Biden behind him, and they're all the family behind them. So this is obviously the funeral, but they didn't have to do any of that. Like, they didn't have to embellish this. They say it over and over again. The truth is more than sufficient. Like, this is really, really creepy. And the fact checker left out the most disturbing piece to it, which shows you just another incident where fact checkers suck because they really didn't check the facts. Yeah, they called the people who posted this on Facebook and, whatever, TikTok out for their lying and misrepresenting it to some extent. But it doesn't have to be misrepresented to see that it's inappropriate. Because if they had said, they're talking about his behaviors, they're like, oh, he touches his hair and he rubs his back and he's just comforting the boy, but they don't say anything about the most disturbing part, right? And that's not fact-checking. That's misrepresenting. That's disturbing, where he grabs him by the face and he pulls him in and he gets in the dominant position, he kisses him, and it's off the charts creepy. But the other thing that the fact-checkers leave off is that JoJo has had a long history of this. I showed you his apology. He had to apologize and take responsibility for this behavior that he did in the past. And this is something they rolled out on his campaign, and comedians were making fun of him, calling it the audacity of grope like Jon Stewart. David Letterman, other comedians made fun of him, even more recently, some of them. And then there was what happened in CNN. And this is something people know, that JoJo touches kids and people inappropriately. It's something he's known for. And they elected him president anyway. They decided to just whitewash all this stuff. And these fact checkers were, operating on the assumption this was the only time people are going to remember JoJo doing this. But we all remember him doing it time and time again. He's got a problem, right? He touches people in weird ways in public and at these ceremonies. So I've pulled some highlights from earlier videos I did on this. So let's go through it here. So this is I think it's the 2015 swearing in ceremony. He did this time and time again. It's up on C-SPAN. I went through it and I pulled out just some of the inappropriate touching. He did this with this girl who he talked about her having boyfriends, and he asked to have a private photo just with her. And her dad said, oh, be careful, or whatever it was, right? Or Dad's watching you real carefully. And so, he's up there, he's got his hands on her shoulders. And this is a big day for the family. This is the sort of, stuff that nobody talks about. That all these people, that girl's excited to be in Washington, D.C. He just said, can I have a private photo with Jess? And she's laughing because, he's the vice president and they're in Washington, D.C. And, this is a day of celebration. And so no one wants to wreck it. No one wants to come out and say this guy is a real creep. It's a big swearing in ceremony for the grandfather today. And so he wants to take a private picture with this girl. Why would he want to do that, right? He's touching her hair and, he's flirting with the girls and talking about how pretty they are and various things. And this is, well-known JoJo behavior. He's got that, creepy Joker smile. This is a 12 or 13-year-old girl. And it then goes on from there. So this is Mitch McConnell and his wife who worked for Donald Trump, and they had a falling out. Remember, I don't know if she quit or something near the end. And these are, I believe, their daughters or granddaughters. And he gets really handsy with them. He does the face touching again. So he's got his hands on them. This is classic JoJo. And again, you got to remember the social dynamics here. JoJo's the president of the Senate, so he's in charge of all this. He's the vice president of the United States. A lot of these kids are, sort of starstruck by what's going on. It's a big day at the Capitol Hill, and he's in charge of this whole thing. And so nobody wants this day to go poorly. Then he touches the girl's face again. Constant JoJo movement. He grabs her hair. Again, a little girl here, 5, 6 years old. Mother's oblivious, right? And JoJo's looking down. His attention and focus is on her. He pulls her hair back. He doesn't know this girl. Like, this isn't part of his family. This isn't And he grabs her by the head and does that dominant thing. He's got both hands on the side of her head, and he's kissing her. She didn't give him permission to do that. Neither did the mom. Mom's looking on, right? Nobody said that was okay. He doesn't have permission to touch these kids like that, right? If this was an adult, and he's got his hand sort of on her chest here, I mean, just not cool at all, right? Like if this was your kid, you want this old creepy MNF doing this? And he's, on the verge of wrecking this day, right? Like if some father comes and takes a swing at him and says, what are you doing, you perv, right? This is a big day for them. And JoJo's taking advantage of it because he's the master of ceremony. I mean, it's just not cool. Like this is inappropriate behavior. So these fact checkers are leaving all of this out, right? He's got his hand on there for a long time, and he's known for this. This is something not just this day, but he's done it so many different times, so much so that he was made fun of it by Democrats, and he was considered a bad candidate for that reason. And the mom isn't doing anything. She knows this is creepy, but like she's just having her moment here with, Turtle Mitch McConnell. So again, I'm just pulling out some of the highlights here. Here's another little girl. He gets hands. He always grabs them. And he has a way of, like he's orchestrating it. And I did this in this much longer video. He's touching this girl's hair, doing the same thing, stroking her hair. But he got these kids in front of them, right? He got these kids in front of him. He would orchestrate it so the kid would be right in front of him for the pose. He did it over and over again. There, grabbing the face, touching the face, very similar behavior, like he did with his grandson. And this girl doesn't know him, and the family doesn't know him. He's not a member of the family. He's not, some privileged guy that can just go do this, right? Somebody, and it would be creepy for any member of the family to do this. Like, if I was a kid, I wouldn't want my grandfather touching me in this way, right? And certainly if you were an adult, I mean, it'd be a bad day for JoJo, right? And so, like, this is something he's constantly doing. Here's, another little girl, and he's always orchestrates getting these girls in front of him, right? And he's a big deal. This girl doesn't want anything to do with him, so he leans in, starts kissing her, and she's leaning away. Like, she clearly doesn't know him. She's tired. She doesn't give a crap about what's going on here. She's, grumpy, how little kids get. And some creepy old guys come up and kissing her on the shoulder. That's inappropriate. And she's clearly, by her body language, pulling away from him, which they often do. And so he's not acknowledging. He said he's going to listen. He always listens to them. He's going to listen better. He's going to listen. He's not listening now by her body language. And he goes back in for a double dose. And she's like, get away from me. She puts her hand up in front of her face. Get away from me, creepy MNFer. I don't want that, right? I don't know you. And she's, getting cozy with her dad. She's tired. She wants to be left alone. And this creepy guy, I'm sensitive to this personally. Then he goes in for a third time. She doesn't like it, dude. No means no, you frickin' creepy MNFer. There's another girl like here. This is Mark Warner's teenage daughter. He goes in for the old Snoozeling, sniffing her hair, putting his head on her head. So again, these fact checkers, this is part of the fact checking. Knowing that this guy's got a history. This is called frottage or something like that from my days at working as a counselor with sex offenders. And this is something where, there are people who just like to touch other people. They'll rub up against them in the subway and, creepy stuff like that. JoJo seems to be one of them. He's, got something weird. What does he get out of this? Like, why does he like to go up to people he doesn't know and get in there? He takes a selfie with her, getting in close with her as well. Again, a teenage girl. And so there's a lot of things. I'll show you another, I got something else that I pulled off the internet, but he often has his hands around women's waist. So here's one of the famous ones, this girl with the red hair, and he's going to really target her, and she pulls away. This is something that people have seen over and over again. But the parents are there, and JoJo has to get her in front of, he's calling her over. He wants her in front of him. She's standing away from him by her dad, and her parents said, oh, go ahead. He grabs her by the arm and pulls her in close like he did with his grandson. He's rubbing her arm, right? He's, touching her in like a sensual way. And then, they go for the sky cam, which they always do. But JoJo's attention's clearly on her, right? He's thinking about her. The mom's there. But then he goes in, boom. He gives her, first he comes in, he does a little snoozling, rubs her with his nose, puts head to head. She's leaning away. She's clear doesn't like it. She's going farther and farther away. He goes for a kiss, and she moves her head. Dad's laughing, like his dad, like, yeah, it's great, you know. His daughter's running for her life here, and JoJo's glomming all over. Yeah, pat him on the back, you know. I would go a lot different if I was there, like, you know. I mean, that's just not cool at all. Look at this creepy, lecherous MNFer. And then this girl, they got a baby there. JoJo making jokes. His attention's always on these girls. This is all from the same day, right? I think it was a 2-day signing-in period, but this is from the same day. And he does this over and over again. Like, he's always putting his attention towards some of the kids. He makes jokes about the girls being good looking, the brothers needing to protect them. And I mean, this whole thing. I did a much longer video on this. And you can watch the whole video on C-SPAN if you really want to get creeped out. But again, grabbing her arm, pulling her in front of him, stroking her shoulder. Again, all inappropriate touching. Like if you were dating a woman, it was like the first date, then he puts his hand around her waist, something he does very commonly. And that's very sensual. And, you know, it's something that makes people uncomfortable, right? And, you know, certainly with women, like if you were dating a woman, like, you know, the first hour you meet them, or, you know, even something at the office and you went up and you're taking a office photo with some of your coworkers, and you put your arm around their waist, and he comes in he loves to touch their, you know, smell their hair and all that shit, right? Like he's just an out and out creep. This is what JoJo does. And so this is part of the fact checking. This fact checker is bogus. Facebook sucks because, again, they left out the most important part, or the two most important parts. One, he grabbed his grandson. Here he goes. He's orchestrating those girls over because there's nobody in front of him. So he sees a couple of young girls. They got to get in front of him. That's what JoJo does. He grabs her. The other one's like, I don't want to go over there. He's got his arm around her, staying away, touching inappropriately. And again, I didn't go through this in a thorough fashion. I just grabbed a few of them that were, you know, some of the clips and highlights, but there was many more of this. And so, you know, wrecking this day, then he goes for her hair, touching her hair. Like he loves doing that. He's got, you know, a pattern of behavior. He likes to get his face on the back of their heads, and he likes to hold them and put his big ugly face behind them, and he likes to grab their faces and their hair and all these things. I mean, he's got a pattern of behavior here. So I remember this from the video I did, and, you know, I think it got demonetized. I don't know what was up with it, but here he is. He's got his hand on this girl's waist, something very common. And what he said to the girl, like he was very flirtatious with her and talking about how good looking she was. So it was more verbal in this case. But again, putting your arm around, you know, somebody's waist, it's very invasive, right? It's not something you just go do to somebody you don't know. And so, and he always, like at the end, he tries to get a little, here comes his, getting a little, you know, doing all that JoJo stuff, right? Getting close to her. He's already talked to her in a way that was sensual. He's in there. He's got his face in there. He's also got his hand on this little girl down here. He's got, like, he's going for a twofer there, right? He's got a hand near her chest and his face near the other girl's face. And so, you know, it's just classic JoJo. He's hitting for the cycle. He's going, you know, going for broke here. Then he's got his hands on that little boy's face and, you know, all these things, right? You think the guy has a problem? You know, I know most of you already dislike JoJo and you're not, like, you know, JoJo lovers or, you know, Democrats and things. You think this guy's got a problem? And it's, you know, embarrassing for the media and the Democrats that their hatred for Trump and whatever reason they decide to elect this guy, that they just got this guy in there and he's not a good person. And then the girls want a selfie, right? And then he gets in there, gets his face in there, girls get in there, right? And they're getting a picture with the vice president. So they think it's a good thing, but his behavior is him taking advantage of his position. And if he's going to do this with, you know, take these liberties with these girls and little kids, then what is he going to do with your $2 trillion of, you know, of money he's going to dispense? I mean, think about his character. Like, what's he going to do with the, you know, the full weight of the presidency behind him? So here he is in Waterloo, Iowa, campaigning. This woman must be a Democrat fan, and it's kind of grainy footage. This is an old clip. I couldn't find a better version, but he goes and touches this woman's face. It's a grown woman. He just goes up and touches her face. She's smiling, and, you know, she's a fan possibly, and he just takes advantage, right? You understand this. You're a celebrity. He's a celebrity. I mean, he's vice president here, somebody who's, you know, a powerful person, Here he goes. He grabs this guy in a headlock, same kind of thing, getting dominant. Gives a guy a kiss, right? Like he doesn't know him. Kid's like pulling away. He's like, what's happening here? And then there's all these other, this is, just a compilation from these, other people put up there. This woman's a great one. He grabs a woman by both arms. He's got his hand around her waist, right? Look at her face. Whoa, like what's... She gives a little, look at her expression, right? Like she's totally aware that JoJo's glomming onto her. And this appears to be another day, this compilation of him swearing in. He's going for a around the waist. This has a lot of him grabbing girls and women around the waist. Again, very invasive. And, there he is, another girl he's got around the waist. And again, this is only a portion of all the inappropriate. Another girl he's got around the waist there as well. Just a portion of all the inappropriate stuff he does. And then there's, this girl, he goes up and just touches her face. This is, are you 17? What are you, a senior? That's what he asks her. And so, and he touches her face inappropriately. Again, doesn't know these kids, doesn't know these people, but he keeps on doing the same behaviors. So these are from some of the famous ones. There's those, Mitch McConnell's kids or grandkids again. There's that woman. That's, they've showed that over and over again. Touching that woman's face. I mean, these are, if you Google Joe Biden and groping, this is what you're going to get. Sniffling, snoozling, groping women and kids. This is JoJo's favorite pastime. So finding people lying on the internet, people misrepresenting things and exaggerating, and I say it over and over again, don't do that. You don't have to. Like, it's that bad, right? It's a complete crap show down here. I made a joke in an earlier video today, like God gave us more developed frontal lobes and opposable thumbs, and this is the mess that we've made, right? Like, it's just absolutely, this is the apocalypse. There's so much stuff going on that is like, head-scratchingly disturbing. Like, it's just so bad. And what JoJo does is just so bad. You don't need to lie and embellish and make things up and misrepresent dates or, say that that's some just random boy because it's obviously somebody he's related to because his family is with him. I said that when I made the video. It looks like his, son, grandson or something like that. And so, it turned out to be that because Jill's with him and his son's widow is with them, the one that Hunter ends up banging later on, right? I mean, just think about that. That's, the woman standing next to the boy. The boy is her son, right? Hunter's nephew, and Hunter's going to come in there with his crack pipe. And I mean, think about this family here. There's JoJo, and the woman next to him is, a woman who lost her husband, marries or then dates her husband's brother who's a crack addict, and she gets worried he's going to kill himself or something, and he takes his gun and puts it in a trash can across the street from a high school, an open trash can, just lays it on top. Some homeless guy takes it. They don't know the whereabouts of the gun, and the FBI and the Secret Service come in and clean it up. And, and then the New York Post posts a story about it, and then they find it on, Hunter Biden's laptop and all these things. The email exchange. I mean, I did a whole video on that. That's how effed up this family is. You don't have to make stuff up. And so the fact checkers are able to, get the low-hanging fruit where people make things up and lie and embellish, which they didn't need to do. But what they miss out on is this very disturbing grabbing him by the face and pulling him into him and forcibly kissing him. And then they miss out on a whole history of JoJo's behavior that everybody knows about. So that's not fact-checking. Facebook sucks, right? And everybody who's involved with this kind of behavior where they're suppressing what everyone should know by now. JoJo's a messed up dude, right? Across the board. A messed up dude who has a messed up family, and he's running the country, right? He's, got dementia. He's probably worse than ever now. He's definitely worse than ever. And this guy is in charge of $2 trillion in, bailout money and another $2 trillion in infrastructure money, $4 trillion, a guy who has a very seedy past. And if he's willing to take liberties like this in public with women and kids and, dominate them in this way and get all handsy and things, what do you think he's going to do with your money, right? Like, what do you think he's going to do with the country? And so there's a reason they put this guy in there. And like I said, I can take this stuff light because I know that the system has to come down. I've done this long enough to see that we are imploding morally. And, the heartfulness meditation I talk about says that there needs to be, a collapsing of the decadent materialistic system that we've created to rebirth into something spiritual where people have a deeper relationship with God. And so, that's how I can make light of this stuff and see it, as something as a sign of the, the needed apocalypse so that we can have something better and people can rise to a higher level of vibration. But right now we suck. And these fact checkers are completely oblivious to what's obvious to most of the rest of us. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.